We are so honored and pleased to have the head coach and general manager of the world champion Washington Mystics, Mike Thibault, joining us today on Christy's Court on the Field of 68 Network. Coach, it is such an honor to have you join us today as we turn the page from college hoops to WNBA hoops.
Great to be here. It's great to get started with our season.
Oh my goodness, right around the corner we are from this season's WNBA. And let's take it back to the passion of the game that you have not only exuded and modeled for your players, but also many, many coaches along the way, including myself. But when you were a student at St. Martin's, what was Mike Thibault like during that time in terms of hunger, of learning more about the game?
Well, it's funny. I mean, that's kind of an anomaly situation because I was older. I had already gone to college somewhere else, had already coached in high school, had already coached in a junior college. And the only reason I ended up actually at St. Martin's was because I was offered a coaching job. They offered to finish. I wanted to get another degree. They offered to take care of all of that. So I took a job there as an assistant coach and director of intramurals and worked part-time for another job and finished my English degree all at the same time. So I was due to be finished. I was actually at Santa Clara U before that and was about to finish, but I couldn't turn down a coaching job that was so good.
Right.
And so I left California for a college assistant job, something I had never intended to do. I mean, I was going to be quite content to be a high school English teacher and coach. Never thought about coaching in college, never thought about coaching in the pros. And a friend of mine took the head coaching job at St. Martin's and said, would you like to come? I said, well, I got to finish up, my degree, which I had put off. I went to college on kind of the 10-year plan. So
that's all right. You finished.
So that was an opportunity for me to kind of do everything I wanted to do at the same time. So I was different when I went there. I mean, I was an older student, so I kind of saw the world from a couple different vantage points. But I had realized by then I did have a passion for the coaching was going to be my long-term thing. When I first went to college, I had no intention of being a coach. I was going to be, a music major, a rock star. I was going to do all of that. I had given up basketball. I, had been offered a chance to try to walk on in college, which I knew I was just going to be, you know what a 20-20-20 player is, Christy? It's when you get to play with 20 seconds left, 20 points ahead or 20 points down. That's what I was. So, I didn't really intend to be a coach. And then I fell in love with the game. My senior year of high school, I got hurt. And was missing most of the season. So they asked me to help coach the freshmen and I kind of liked it, but it was kind of one of those things. But while I was in college, I got asked to go coach at a high school as an assistant coach. And that's where I kind of fell in love with the game. So I switched my major. And so St. Martin's was just kind of the end part of that. And so, it was a situation where I didn't really know if I would stay in college or what I would do, but I just fell in love with the game as a long-term thing.
What was it about the game that captured your heart at that moment?
I think, it's funny when you grow up and you play a bunch of different sports. I never really kind of chose basketball as kind of what I love the most, and probably until I was like a sophomore in high school. When I was younger, I was a better baseball player than I was a basketball player. Every kid dreams of growing up and playing a pro sport, but I really thought if I ever played a sport for any length of time, it was going to be baseball. And then it just got boring to me and basketball was still exciting. And so, I think you keep doing it because you love the game. I mean, it's I get to coach a kid's game. And, you're in the gym. It's a sport where, it's a team sport, but you can go learn the game or work on your game and you don't need a lot of other people around. You need a hoop and a basketball. And sometimes you don't even need the hoop if you want to work on some things. So, it's one of those things where it just became something that, you like to be around. I always wanted to watch the game. I loved playing. I liked, everything about it. And the other thing about, as you know, when you coach or play a team sport, the camaraderie that goes with it, the associations you make, the working together as a group to make something happen. I always loved that part of it. I'm the oldest of 9 in a big family. And so, I was used to people having to cooperate to make things work. So, a game like basketball was a simple one for me to figure out how you get a group of people to get all get on the same page. And so I think I was always intrigued by that too.
Oh, that's so awesome. The oldest of 9. So you were the conductor, right? As the oldest sibling?
Yeah. Well, or the babysitter or the, whatever. I was the first to do all the chores until we could get somebody else old enough to try to help out. So
that's so awesome. That's so awesome. But that's why you're the great coach that you are today, because of that kind of leadership. I love it. And you said something about being a rock star. Let's revisit that statement real quickly. And I know, the Jackson 5 had their 5, but did the Thibaults have a band going on?
No, not at all. In fact, for a long time, I was really the only person in my family that was, a musician. I played drums and trombone. I went to college as a music major. Played in different bands in the Bay Area in California, where I grew up. You're talking about the 60s and 70s on the West Coast and Fillmore West and all the different groups that came from that. So, I really loved music. But I realized, as I was starting to fall back in love with basketball, that A, I was going to have to choose something, and B, the music profession is not real solid. Let's say there's not a lot of job security in that. So I picked another profession that has no job security either. But it was just one of those things, you realize, and I think you do that in almost anything you do, that you have to have a continued passion to do it. And in the music business, you have to be very fortunate, kind of be in the right place at the right time sometimes, and the work that you have to do. And I still loved it, liked it, but I loved it. I loved the game of basketball more than I liked music. So that's how it ended up.
We need to dig up some of those photos for.
No, you don't.
Okay. The broadcast.
Those are being hidden, burned.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Think bell bottoms and platform shoes.
I'm picturing that.
And a fro.
I would really love to see a real photo, but the picture in my mind is taking me there 100%. Right.
Let's not delve too far into those pictures. So.
Right. Well, the love of the game for you carried you to the NBA in 1980, and you before that said that you stuck with the game because of that passion that you had. But how did you get involved with the Lakers and the Bulls and winning a couple of NBA championships as an assistant on the NBA level?
Well, like most young coaches, when you're coaching in high school or college, there's that whole summer camp circuit where you're out teaching kids and everything else. So I worked a lot of camps in the 70s, 6, 7, 8 weeks in the summer. I can remember actually doing some summers where I did like 10 straight weeks. And you go Sunday afternoon to Friday afternoon, crash on Saturday and start over again on Sunday. But one of the things I did is that I worked Jerry West camp while I was coaching at St. Martin's, and his 2 assistants, Stan Albeck and Jack McCloskey, were well known, and I got to know them. And so where I coached at St. Martin's is kind of halfway between Portland and Seattle. Okay. And when East Coast teams used to come west, they would start and they'd kind of go up or down the coast. So a lot of teams would play in Seattle one night and Portland a couple nights later, then at Golden State and then into LA. So those 2 assistant coaches for Jerry asked me if I would start scouting opponents when I could for them when they came in Seattle and Portland. So I did that part-time. They paid me, per game, and I got to know them, got to be around the Lakers some. And then when Jerry retired as the coach, they brought in Jack McKinney, and Paul Westhead was his assistant. And I got to know Paul a little bit, but I wasn't really thinking I was going to do any more work for the Lakers. I figured that was done. And about 2 weeks into that first season in 1979-80, Jack McKinney, who was the head coach, had a terrible bike accident. If people know the history of the Lakers, and he didn't coach anymore there that year, and Paul Westhead took over. Well, because I had called him and kind of just said, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. I've been doing scouting. He called me and said, hey, we need somebody to do this now the rest of the year. And so for the 79-80 season, I did all their West Coast scouting. And, I was coaching at an NAIA school at the time. And we weren't on the road every night recruiting. We didn't have that kind of budget. So I could always find 2 nights a week to scout for the Lakers. So after winning the championship in 80, they elevated me full-time to an assistant coach and director of player personnel. And that's how I ended up in the NBA. They liked apparently what I was doing. They liked my work. We won a championship, so that always helps. Yeah. And so there I was at the age of 29, the youngest assistant coach in the NBA. And right place, right time. But I, as a message to all young coaches or any profession you're in, you never know when your opportunity is going to come. So, if you've done what's that, preparation meets opportunity. Well, you have to have done your work. And luckily for me, I was in the right place at the right time, but I had also done my homework and I was prepared. And so it worked out, and it just kind of happened after that. I stayed in LA for a couple of years. Coach Westhead got fired during the 82 season. Pat Riley took over. I was the assistant for him. We won the championship in 82. And then the Bulls came calling. They were in the rebuild process. And so they wanted me to come in and do the same role that I had in LA to kind of turn their thing around. And so I went there as a director of player personnel and an assistant coach. Back in the NBA days now, now you see these staffs in the NBA with, 8 assistant coaches and 5 scouts and everything. Back then, we had 2 assistant coaches who did everything. We did our pro scouting, our college scouting. And so I learned a lot and out of necessity. And, all the people that do their video editing on computers, we had the old reel-to-reel VCR tapes. So you had 2 tape machines set up at a time to do edits. And that was a lot of work, but I think it taught me a lot about what's important, how to be efficient with my time. And so I got to be a part of the start of the rebuild in Chicago. I didn't last through the whole thing when they went through the ownership change, but it was fun being there and seeing the thing develop.
Well, Magic Johnson is my all-time favorite point guard at 6'8", 6'9", and just the passion that he played the game with. And he found more joy in making his teammates better than whenever he got his own bucket. What was it like coaching players like Magic Johnson, like Michael Jordan at their best? They won championships, and, you were sitting right there as an eyewitness to that.
Well, it's funny. I mean, what I learned early on, and, I was fortunate. I mean, in LA, not only you had Magic, but you had an older veteran like Kareem, who I still think it sounds kind of weird, but almost underrated in a sense with the younger generations, because none of these people, they know who Magic and Michael are. They've seen the video, but Kareem was a great pro. And, he was older than me by a few years as an assistant coming in. That was kind of interesting. But those players, the reason they're so good is they can't stand to lose. And it comes across, not just lose a game, but lose a practice drill. Sometimes, I see young players just trying to get through a practice, and I'm thinking they would never survive with some of these great players, because those guys wanted to win every drill, every practice meant to them. I think of Michael, who prided himself, in practice, never losing. The only argument I ever had in the couple of years I was with him was over the score of a scrimmage, like in the middle of January, halfway through the season. He thought I cheated him out of a basket, and, and his competitive nature took over. But, I learned in LA with Magic and Kareem and those guys that if we lost a game, some people go off and they can forget about it. Those guys couldn't wait to play the next game. They wanted to get that taste of losing out of their system. They would have said, okay, let's go play again like 6 hours from now, and so we can get it out. And I think that separates the best players from the okay players. This unbelievable desire to be great every day. And I've been fortunate. I mean, both in the NBA and the WNBA, I've been around those kind of players. And that's what it takes to win championships.
Well, you've won championships, obviously, with a couple teams in the NBA, but then also in the CBA, where you coached for 9 seasons. You won in Omaha in '93, but then you also went and coached with the Bucks for a while, for about 5 years, and then got into the WNBA. What was it that turned your eye to the WNBA to begin coaching at Connecticut?
I mean, it was a kind of a confluence of a bunch of things. In Milwaukee, it kind of had run its course. Terry Stott's another assistant who's now the coach of the Portland Trailblazers, and I were on George Karl's staff. And we just had, Terry and I were actually fired in Milwaukee, and I had gone to work for the Knicks and the Hawks as a consultant, and was mulling a couple NBA offers to go back. And at the same time, there was a job opening. If people remember that follow the WNBA, the Portland Fire, they were a part of the league, and they asked to talk to me. I had several friends who were GMs or coaches in the WNBA who had told them. My daughter was just starting to play AAU basketball, and she kept saying, "Dad, we need more coaches in the women's game." And I had friends in the W that said I would really enjoy it. So it's kind of funny how history happens. I had agreed to a contract with the Portland Fire, and I was going to coach their team. And 2 weeks before my press conference, we had already agreed on a contract, and I was looking at houses online. Paul Allen, who was, in the Trailblazers and the Fire, decided to get rid of the team. He just disbanded the team. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I just gave up on an NBA job. I don't have this one. And the people out there said, well, Connecticut is about to buy the Orlando Miracle. They would like to talk to you. Would you be interested? So I said, sure. And I went and visited Connecticut, liked the people. I like the idea of a kind of a startup situation. I kind of like those, rebuild things or, startup things. It kind of interests me. So they were buying the team from Orlando, bringing it to Connecticut. They were going to be the first non-NBA owned WNBA team. When the team was in Orlando, they were basically an underachieving team. They had always been around 500, but had never won big. And I liked the challenge. And so after we met, I said, okay, I'll do it. We'll try it. We'll see what happens. Not knowing whether I would stay long-term. I thought, okay, if this, I don't like this, I'll go back to the NBA in a couple of years and move on. And it turned out that I loved it. And in that, it's now, this is going to be 19th year in the WNBA. And I've had, 3, 4, 5 offers to go back to the NBA, but I love what I'm doing so much. And I like being a head coach. And, if I had stayed in the NBA, I would have been a long-term assistant, but probably never a head coach. And just all those things kind of coming together at the same time. I did it and I've loved it and haven't looked back. And the other funny thing that happened is, when you're in the NBA, it's such a grind. It's a long season, 82 games, and you're going, through the winter. Well, if I had stayed in the NBA, and I didn't think about it at the time, I wouldn't have seen my kids grow up as much. I would have missed a lot of their games or music concerts or those kinds of things. But being in the WNBA, I was home more that I could, pick and choose when I went to scout college games, and I could be there to watch them do their things. And it made for such a great family life for us that, the WNBA was a real blessing for me in that regard.
That is so beautiful. And I know your family well, and they are entrenched in the game. Your wife, Nancy, obviously is your biggest cheerleader.
She was a good player.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she played in high school and then went to nursing school out of high school, but she was a good high school player. So they all have it in the family.
I didn't know that. And I love that as well. And that's why she has such great energy, Mike. And I just love being around her. And it has trickled down to your children. Eric is on your staff as associate head coach. And Carly is at Minnesota as an assistant coach there. And she is being tuteled by Lindsay Whalen. who you drafted at Connecticut. So this basketball circle is so big in your family.
It's funny, I talked to people the other day about the basketball life. It's a big world and a small world at the same time. The circle of people you meet and the friends you meet through basketball, even around the world, how it's done so much just to open people's eyes, in my family, the places we've gotten to go, the travel we've done, and the people you meet, the friendships that you end up making that last a lifetime. It's incredible that this business we're in.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. And, with the WNBA, I mean, you won Coach of the Year in the WNBA 3 times over. You won the championship in 2019. And I was there in the building when the confetti was falling. And I have chills right now again. But I will never forget you putting your hands over your head and saying woo or something. I don't know. Yeah. But you were just in that moment, just living the experience. And what was that like, not only for you personally, but to experience it with your family there, obviously with Eric being on your staff and looking around at all the players, just really just feeling that win and that championship?
It was really a mixture because at the moment, I really wasn't thinking about anything that had to do with me. That's one of those things you can kind of enjoy later. I remember when I came here, I'll put it in, this is probably a little bit long-winded, but I had just been fired in Connecticut after going 25-9 and, losing in the conference finals. And it was one of those kind of like, what else would you like me to do other than win a championship? And so, you want to win a championship kind of personally. But by the time we got to that point here, when I came to Washington, the franchise couldn't have been any lower, as you know. I mean, they had been 5-29 and 6-28, and the fans were discouraged. The season ticket numbers were down. I remember coming in here to play the year before with Connecticut, like in the last 10 days of the season, and it felt like a mausoleum at Cap One. There was hardly anybody there. Yeah. There was no enthusiasm. And then in that offseason, I hadn't been let go in Connecticut. There was the lottery in the 3-C year.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in my couch in Connecticut watching Washington, who had, I think, the worst record 2 years in a row, get the 4th pick in the 3-C draft. And I'm watching the look on Sheila Johnson's face, and I'm saying, those poor people down in Washington, I can't believe they're going to have to go through this. And of course, 8 weeks later, I'm the coach of this group that now has to figure this out. And so, to go through that process and to see, I remember going to my press conference here, and, Sheila kind of trying to introduce me as a savior. And the last thing I thought about was being a savior. I'm thinking about how are we going to win more than, get from 5 wins to 10 wins. And, you don't know your players that well, and you're trying to figure things out. But I always am a big believer in the process and how you go about things. And I think that's how you build winning things, is you have to stick with your fundamental principles as a coach and what you believe in. And part of it is building a culture and what you accept or don't accept in behavior and work ethic and, all of those things, how teammates interact. I remember seeing those and talking to fans when I first came, and how, down they had been about the whole situation. When I met with Ted and Sheila about the job, that, this is kind of our last gasp. If this doesn't work, we don't know if we're going to stay in business. And everybody was at that point. I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, the team was losing a ton of money every year. Everybody talks about the attendance figure championships that this franchise used to have. It didn't translate to money. I mean, a lot of those tickets were discounted and free. And, a lot of people will go see things when it's free, but we have to stay in business. And so we had a lot of things we had to do here to make this better. And so I fell in love with the process. I had to go through that in Connecticut. I did that in the CBA in Omaha. When I went to Chicago from LA, that was part of it. When I went to Milwaukee, that was a rebuild. And so, I had learned along the way what things I had to be as non-negotiables. And that was our starting point. And so the first year here in Washington, I used it as a, hey, let me observe this group of players. What will they buy into? What won't they buy into? Who needs to go? Who needs to stay? How do we get better? And, one of the hardest things about it is fans naturally fall in love with players, not just because of their ability, because of personalities or, how they like them. Unfortunately, the team I inherited had a bunch of nice people, but they weren't good enough to win, or they'd have won more than 5 games. And so, we had to make some difficult decisions about trades and the kind of people you bring in. And so that process has been, this is a long-winded answer, but what I thought about when we won that night in the last minute, I'm looking around the stands and I'm seeing fans who I had seen at my very first press conference, and they were crying.
Yes.
And so you asked me what I saw first. That was what I was thinking about first as we were winning. The second part was looking at the players and staff who bought into what I was selling, in the sense that they were doing, here's Marianne Stanley and Eric and Asia and, Maria and all the Safu on my staff, all these people who had said, hey, we believe in what you're doing, we're on. And then the players, Elena made a conscious decision. Christy made a decision to come here because they thought we could pull it off. And so I was so happy for them to watch them celebrate, because you don't always get rewarded. You can be a great team and you don't necessarily get rewarded. One of the best teams I ever coached was in Connecticut in 2005. We had the best record and we were really good. Asia played on that team. And the very first game of the finals, Lindsay Whalen got hurt and didn't play the rest of the series, or played a couple minutes. And so we went from being the favorite, the best team, to just struggling to get through the, get through the whole rest of the finals with backup point guards. And so you never know when your opportunity is going to come. And to watch it finally happen for that group, that was the most fun for me, to see all those people. And then that night, as you know, we had, the post, game celebration. And I'm looking at about 100 Monumental Sports employees who never thought they were going to see that either. On the basketball side, none of them were alive when the Wizards won a championship. And so this is the first basketball championship in Washington since, the old Bullets won their championship. So for these employees who work so hard to put on the game presentations and the ticketing and marketing, that was thrilling for me to see all those people get rewarded for it. And I knew they'd all be getting a championship ring. That was exciting for me. My celebration for me kind of came with my family later. And it's, you have moments where you're sitting on the beach or and you can think about it and say, okay, that's really something special that we did. But at the moment, it was like watching everybody else.
That is so amazing. And it was amazing to see the fans who have been invested, who have been cheering and were crying tears of joy. And I was right there with them. I mean, I'm side to side, left to right. And I had a couple I had to wipe away. I mean, it was amazing for this city to win the championship the way that you did it. And when you came in here in 2013, I remember you sitting down and telling the season ticket holders, trust me. Trust in our staff, trust in the process, like you said. Yeah. And wow, for it to happen was truly amazing. And thank you again for involving me with receiving a ring. I keep it right by my bed. And I tell you, it has healing properties, because when I'm having a bad day, I'll sleep in that thing and I wake up and ready to go the next day. So it's a great thing for everyone involved. So I appreciate that. But with that being said, last year was just so unprecedented. I know that's an overused word, but it's just so true to what it has been. And you went down to the bubble last year, coming off of a championship season, thinking that you were going to have all the pieces back and going into the season with new pieces like a Tina Charles to be involved. And then things just changed immediately for you, like a Rubik's Cube, like you had it all set. All the colors were right. And then somebody just goes and mixes
That's
it up.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you approach last season going into that bubble, and then evaluate what it was like after you came through it and what that meant for you and the team as well?
I think the first thing was, you spend an off season preparing offenses and defenses that fit your personnel. And so when that started to blow up on us, we had to do a lot of scrambling as a staff to say, okay, what are we going to have to change? And it was kind of in segments because we knew early on that, and the public didn't know it necessarily, but we knew that Elena was going to be challenged to play at all. But certainly when the pandemic struck, that really set everybody back. Part of getting healthy is being able to get on the court and test what you need to have done. There were some other reasons that there were setbacks in all of this as that have come to light, and we've kind of just, acceded to Elena's wishes to just, let her be private of dealing with it. But, that was the first thing. And then we knew that Tina had some medical issues that there were a concern with, the coronavirus. And then, then Tosh and, LaToya opt out. And then, 5 games into the summer, Ariel Powers gets hurt. So it kind of came in stages, but we kept trying to adjust and see, okay, how are we going to get through this? So I told our staff that we don't know right now. We can't predict what we're going to have from a win and loss record, but let's try to accomplish a couple things. Number one, let's make sure that we keep getting better no matter what. I said the second part is that there are some players right now this summer, and it turned out to be what we thought, that will have an opportunity that they may not have had otherwise to step up into more prominent basketball roles and more prominent leadership roles. And so, and in particular, and we made them a focal point of this for Ariel Atkins, and it would have been Ariel Powers that she'd been there all summer, and Maisha Hines-Allen. Here was an opportunity for them to kind of prove what they could do. So, I hated to put it in these terms, and I didn't with my team, but I did it with my staff, having gone through the NBA process where you go to summer league and you say, okay, one of our jobs in this summer league is to get these 3 players better. Mm-hmm. And if we can do it and our team keeps winning, great. But I'm a realist enough to know that we didn't have the same firepower that, teams like Seattle and Las Vegas and others did. But we were going to compete. We were going to see how tough we could be and fight through it. And so, we got off to a good start. And then all sorts of stuff hit. Ariel gets hurt. She leaves. We got some other people not particularly playing well. We have all of, the constant throughout the summer, the various things we were working on for social justice. And then we had the game where we sat out. And, we were in the midst of not playing well. And that was kind of a seminal moment for our team off the court. But I think it brought us closer together on the court, too. They had to work their way through, dealing with things and how to communicate better with each other. And our team had some pretty long heart-to-heart discussions about, on and off the court things. And then you could see, we had lost, I don't know, whatever it was, 10, 11, 12 in a row, or 12 out of 13. It wasn't like we were getting blown out, but we just couldn't get over the hump. And everybody was looking down. We went and had a beach day. We got away and we got on a boat and talked about things. But the one thing I said to our team was, you've come this far. You've been isolated for a summer. You've been away from your families. You're going to be here for 3 more weeks. You choose how you want those 3 weeks to look. Do you want to just feel sorry for yourself and just get through it and 3 weeks we'll go home? Or do you want to see what you can prove to yourself about yourself? I don't know if we'll make the playoffs, but let's see if we have the kind of fortitude that I think we do. And can we fight through some adversity? Because no matter what, if you want to try to do it that way, it will have a carryover effect down the road. And to their credit, they banded together and did exactly what we were talking about. We had to win, I think, 5 out of our last 6 to make the playoffs. Made it on the last day, and lost a tough playoff game, but it was to a team in Phoenix who we had always struggled about, and we had them beat.
Yeah.
So I think what I saw from those players, and you had Emma as part of that group. We got a couple young players like Stella Johnson and Shug Sutton, some valuable experience. It's going to pay off this summer. And I can't give you concrete numbers or what this will do. I know that Ariel Atkins thrived in her new leadership role. Her voice was important both on and off the court. Maisha Hines-Allen goes from playing, averaging a couple points and a couple rebounds a game to making first team All-League. Obviously there's players missing. If Elena's there and, other players are there, she might not be first time team All-League, but she made herself a force. And so those things that we had talked about 3 months before, we could see happening in front of our eyes. Leilani Mitchell got used to our team. She knows what to expect coming back this year. So I think the lessons we learned and the improvement I've seen it. We've been doing individual workouts now for 10 days or so, and you can just see a confidence level in a couple of those players. Shug Sutton, who got a dozen valuable game, pro experience games. She looks like a new player in that regard. I mean, confidence wise. Ariel Atkins looks like a leader. She looks like, an all pro kind of player. And that's what you hope happens when you go through that experience. 75 days in a row of isolation and testing every day. You learn a lot about yourself too, and what you can handle or not handle. And I think it'll pay off.
Well, you all handled that and went to the playoffs, like you said, and after such a rough patch in the middle of the season. But, just going back to what you said about the social injustices that the WNBA as a whole stood unified with in terms of the voice and the groundswell that came from both the WNBA and the NBA, being in DC, the most powerful city in the world. How important was that for you to continue to empower the players with the Mystics, but also to just kind of add your own voice? Because I know that you've told me, like, back in the 60s and 70s, you had that same voice, but how have you seen that change from then to now?
Well, unfortunately, we're still having some of the same struggles. That's the sad part. But what we've also talked to our players is that, things have changed. They're just hard to see sometimes because every single little incident is captured on cell phones now. What you had in the 60s and 70s was the evening news to see, what was going on. So the communication level is different now. I remember asking John Lewis, I said, you've been a product through all of this. How do you keep yourself going through all this? And he said, because it's necessary, and I do it. But he said, you have to remember that there is progress. When you think that there isn't, he said, when I was growing up, I couldn't imagine a Black president. And yet here we are with Barack Obama in my lifetime. He said, the fact that I am from Georgia, I could never have been a congressman, back then. And here I am. And so we have to understand, looking at history, that yes, we're making progress. Is it fast enough? No. But that part of it, the thing we stress to our players is, being active in social justice isn't a once in a while thing. It isn't once a month or when there is an incident that happens that you react to. True social justice reform takes place on an ongoing basis. And so whether it's, reforming police departments, or whether it's voter suppression, or whether it's, the penal system in general, those things aren't something you fix for a day and then you look back later on. That has to continue every day. And I think that's a lesson that the players are learning, that you can have a voice and you can be effective, but it can't be a once in a while thing. The fact that WNBA players could affect nationally, I mean, where we are with our U.S. Congress right now was highly affected by the WNBA players. I mean, when you think the two Democratic senators from Georgia were elected, and one of them, Reverend Warlock, wasn't even very well known until the WNBA players got involved. Look at what you could have an impact on. And so, that's the most visual one. but you can have little daily ones too that end up, meaning something down the road. It's as simple as in a city that you live in. If you can help reform how police officers are hired or how they can be disciplined or what they're trained to do, those make a difference down the road for the next generation. And so I think that's been the biggest thing for our players, is that have a voice, be strong about what you think, be a learner and a listener so that you don't stick with preconceived ideas. Things do change. You have to listen. Maybe what you think today isn't going to be what you think in 6 months when you have more knowledge. And so, the acquisition of knowledge is a big part of it. And so I think for our players, that's an ongoing thing that I think that they are comprehending.
And I love that you were referencing John Lewis, and you met him on a flight. Tell us more about that.
I'm trying to think of how long ago. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago. One of my first years here in DC, I was flying back from Atlanta. I'd gone to scout or do something. I don't remember where I'd gone. And he was flying back from going home and flying back to DC to start the congressional week. It was on, I think, a Sunday night. And we were seated across from each other. I don't know. I actually ran into him a couple times. It's amazing how it worked out, because on Sunday nights, all the congressmen are coming back to DC all the time but anyway, we got to talking and I started asking him questions, and I said, he asked me what I did and I explained it. And I said, would you ever be open to speaking to our team? And he said, for sure. He said, call my office and we'll set it up. And our team several years ago got a chance to go and visit him in his office, and he talked about his upbringing and civil rights, and they got a chance to answer questions. And we've tried to do something like that every year with our team. Last year was a little tougher with the pandemic and the bubble, but we've taken them to Supreme Court. Justice Kagan hosted us and got Justice Roberts and Sotomayor to come and speak to our team. We've had John Carlos come and speak to our team when we were in Atlanta. So, it's been very, I think, eye-opening for our players. I just want them to experience what else there is in life besides the game of basketball. And so that's been an important thing for me.
Well, it's always bigger than basketball. And Mike, you're the perfect person for that. And just to shine the light and to spearhead the leadership for these young women. I can't say it enough how important that is, like you said, generationally for our world, not just in the basketball world. But moving forward to this season, you were an assistant coach in 2008 with the Olympic team, won a gold medal then, another Olympic year coming up this season with the 1 month gap in between competition in the WNBA. First of all, how will that impact what you do? It's not the first time this has happened, but how will that impact what the season looks like and what goes on during that pause of a month for the Olympics?
Well, it's funny. The first time I went through it was in 2004 when I was coaching in Connecticut. And so I did a little research before we faced it the first time. And what I did was ask college football coaches how they handled bowl games. Because if you have a lot of, if you follow college, usually finishing the first week of December or so, or last week of November. And then, if you're a good team, you're not playing a bowl game till around New Year's. So you have about a month in between. And so I asked them kind of how they approached it. And what we kind of settled on, and it seemed to have worked, and I've stayed with it, is we give them time off first, get them away from the game. So this summer we'll have close to 5 weeks off. We'll probably give our players somewhere between 10 and 14 days, maybe a little longer, depending on the protocols. We'll bring them back and kind of do what we've been doing the last week or so. They can they'll have a structured workout with a coach, individual workout, a shooting workout every other day or every day. They can have, voluntary days. And then the last 2 weeks of that break will be more like training camp. And we will get back and go through a training camp kind of protocol, and we'll scrimmage and do all those things. So, there was this buildup that these college football coaches did as they approached the bowl game, And I felt that that was smart and worked. And so get them away from the game. Let them take a vacation. When they go for those 2 weeks they're off, our strength and conditioning coach and our trainer will give them, individual short workouts they can do. And it can be as simple as going for a 3-mile walk. But get on a treadmill or get on a bike to keep your, aerobic conditioning. Go shoot somewhere, but get away from the daily grind of the game. Have some days where you don't do any of that. But then come back and have, 2.5 to 3 weeks to kind of work our way back to being what we were going away. And historically, other than probably 2016, where we just had everybody injured, it's worked for us. And so that'll be the tentative plan going into this summer. And it'll be interesting to see how many people we have playing on national teams too in the Olympics. I mean, we have 3 candidates on our team for the U.S. team, and Ariel and Tina and Elena. Leilani will play for Australia. And so, we won't even have those players here. So they won't have had the same vacation when they come back. So we're going to have to figure out how to balance that and get them some rest too.
Right. And you have your staff, and let's talk about your staff. I mean, we already said that your son, Eric Thibault, is the associate head coach, but Asia Jones was an assistant coach until very recently.
Till yesterday.
And now she's headed to the Portland Trailblazers. And I know you are super proud of her evolution and just to have more women in the game of basketball. I don't care if it's WNBA, NBA, but just in the game of basketball, I think it's so vitally important. But how proud are you of Asia?
I'm proud of her and I'm excited for her. I'm heartbroken for us in the short term because she's such an integral part of it. And I've coached Asia and worked with her since 2004. So it's a long, 17-year association. But, she's so smart and so thoughtful about things. She went through an interview process over the last 3 or 4 weeks with them. It's in the front office. It's off the court. She's not coaching. She said it's going to be like going to grad school, learning the salary cap and learning, all the number parts of the NBA. But she'll be involved in, their free agency decisions and their trade decisions. And so, I think that's going to be a huge thing for her. And I'm just happy that, she's going to have a job of great significance, and that she's going to be well paid, and it's a great opportunity. Sad for us, but I'm happy for her. Luckily, fortunately for us, we'll be able to fill that position pretty easily, and so I'm proud of her.
Sure. Yeah, I feel that same way having our oldest off in college. Like, I'm sad for me, but I'm happy for him. It's like the same kind of thing. I think, the parental feeling of that movement. But with LaToya Sanders now is going to be bumped up to an assistant coach as of today, which is awesome. But I mean, she won a championship with you. She understands the philosophy that you provide to the team and want executed. How awesome is that going to be to kind of have her on board in a full capacity now as an assistant?
Yeah, it's really it was a no-brainer for me in a lot of ways. She's young and everything else, but when she retired this offseason, we hired her in the position that Asia had 3 years ago as a player development, specialist to work on the court with players, mentor some of the young players. She's been, even when we were in the bubble last year, she would talk with Maisha on an almost daily basis about the game. And so we felt like, instead of going outside to hire somebody, that I've watched her for the last 2 weeks in meetings and on the court with individual players. She's ready for it. She thinks the game, she's always been a good voice in our locker room anyway, but on the court, she was our defensive leader. She and Natasha, were our defensive kind of, directors at the back of the defense. She was the one, calling things out. Her experience playing in the league and playing overseas, her playing overseas stuff has already started to pay off for us, just in discussions about players and coaches and organizations overseas that, we want to know more about. So, And then we have, other people on our staff that complement it. So, we don't talk much about Sefu Bernard, who is on our staff, but he's a director of our player development. Well, he has an NBA background, an international background, and he's worked with me in Connecticut and here. And he's been kind of mentoring LaToya in this process, and they talk all the time. So he'll be here all summer and able to work with her, with players. And then our two film and analytical guys, Daniel Villarreal and Andrew Wade, they have been on the staff now for a couple of years. They're great on the court with players. They've been running individual player workouts. And so I think we're really well covered there. And then, you have one more person like Maria Giovanetti, who's my assistant GM, but she played. I mean, she played at BCU. She was a good player. She gets on the court and works with players. So we've tried to have somebody throughout all of our staff that has a basketball background. Andrew played. So it's just one of those things where I feel good about our staff and how we get along and how we go about our business. But our players feel good about their relationship. There's an immediate respect that LaToya has with our players walking on the court as a coach because of how much they respected her as a teammate and a player.
Yeah, I just saw a post today about her taking this assistant coaching position with you and getting bumped up, but her walk-ins as a player stylistically were very good. So they're anticipating that again from her as an assistant coach as well.
Yeah, I mean, she have, just like Asia, they can relate to her experience because she can literally talk about what they're going through.
Yeah.
Not only to them, but she can be a voice on our coaches meeting. I can turn and say, well, how did you approach this as a player? What were you thinking about in this situation? And it helps us a little bit, see maybe things from a player's point of view that I don't always see.
Right. And just with this season's roster, obviously unfortunate incident with Alicia Clark's injury, but you have Shavante Zellis coming in, but the other players on the roster like Atina Charles and Natasha Cloud and obviously the MVP, Elena Deladon. I mean, Tina Charles also won an MVP with you in Connecticut in 2012. So let's not forget that. But when you have players that have been kind of marinating, obviously didn't play last summer, but now here we go. They've been marinating and now it's time to go ahead and see what this mix is going to look like. What do you anticipate the mix of players coming together looking like for this season?
Well, the first thing is that I have to remind myself when I talk about our team, a year ago, we were like, okay, we've got the championship team plus Tina. Okay, we can do a lot of the same things. Right. Now I look at our team and we don't have that group. LaToya's not playing. Ariel's not here. Christy's not here. Maish is not going to be here for a couple of weeks at the start. Maybe Tiana Hawkins is gone. So we're going to have half our team maybe be new to us. So I have to kind of rethink as we go. All right, how does this particular offense that we want to do, does it fit what we have? Do we need to make some adjustments? I still think you'll see us want to run. I think you'll see a blend of perimeter and post play. I mean, even if you think back to game 5 of the finals, everybody talked about all of our 3-point shooting and everything else. We won that game by going to Elena and Emma in the post down low in the fourth quarter of that game. So with Tina and Elena, we're going to have that. If we get Emma back after the Olympics, we're going to have that too. So we're going to have a blend of, straight power basketball along with our normal pick and rolls and our 3-point shooting. It's nice that we have a lot of post players that can pick and pop. Tina can do that. Obviously, we know Elena can. We brought in Teresa Plaisance, who was a great perimeter shooter. Yes. Maisha showed last summer that she can shoot the 3. So we'll still be that. I think we can be a better defensive team than we were our championship year. And that's saying a lot in that we don't have LaToya, but I think our experience together will make us better at it. I think we're farther along. We became a better defensive team only in the last third of that season in 2019. I think that we can start out a little bit better. We were counting on Alicia Clark to be kind of an anchor in that, but somebody like Shavante Zellis or Erica McCall or somebody else, Kiera Leslie is a terrific defensive player.
Yes.
So we have a lot of things to work through the first part of the season. We're not going to be the best version of ourselves early on. If fans think, oh man, we're going to look like we did, we're not. It's going to take ourselves some time to get used to playing with each other. Probably going to limit Elena's minutes early in the season. We want her to be at her best when it counts the most late in the season. So, I know she had a post out there on Instagram about, maybe not starting training camp. She'll be in doing individual stuff. As training camp goes along, we'll work her in slowly. The goal is still to have her play if we can by the first game, but it may not be a lot of minutes. The Olympic break could help us to, kind of stretch out the learning curve for our team. But the point of the whole thing is to be good at playoff time and be your best version when it gets to September. And so that's how we're going to look at it. We're going to start even with our conditioning and training camp. I don't need everybody to go 100 miles an hour for the first 2 days and then everybody be beat up by the fourth day of training camp.
Right.
We're going to ease ourselves into this. We're going to have an exhibition game 9 or 10 days into training camp, and that'll be kind of the first kind of benchmark of where we are. But I don't know completely what to expect because I'm going to have to do some experimenting just like we did last summer. Luckily, we'll be doing it with a little bit more of a deeper group.
Sure. And the intriguing thing for me is kind of how you're going to utilize Leilani Mitchell and Natasha Cloud. Is that going to look something like Christy Tolliver and Cloud in terms of the interchanged positions there with them at the 1 and 2?
Yeah, it can. And in fact, it's, somebody asked me if I started today, what my starting group would be. Obviously, when we did the deal for Alicia Clark, we assumed that she would be a starter and Leilani would come off the bench. But now we're going to revisit that and think about it. The luxury that we have is we can start a small group with the two of them together with Ariel and Tina and Elena, or we can play a bigger lineup. We can play Elena or Maisha at the 3, and we can bring Leilani off the bench. We'll see how, Kiara and Maisha are when they get here. We're going to see, where Shavante fits into this team. So we have a lot of watching to do and the next couple of weeks to see what best fits. And starting groups are a little bit overrated. Finishing groups are more important. Who do you trust to be on the court against a certain team at the end of a game? Do you want a bigger lineup? Do you want a smaller lineup? Do you need rebounders? Those are the decisions coaches make through a game to try to, and every game, plays out differently. It's not like going to a Broadway play and how it's going to end. I'd like to see a Broadway director decide, okay, we're going to change it up here in Act 4. Ours is on the fly. So we have a lot of watching to do of our team to see what best fits.
Well, I tell you what best fit for Christy's court today was to have you on it. You got shots up and in. Head coach and general manager of the Washington Mystics, Mike Thibault. I love you so much. And I appreciate the time that you spent with us here on the Field of 68 Network today.
Thanks, Christy. I appreciate it.